Um, I'm going to talk a little bit about just the general process and how it works. We call it the 101 of financial aid. And then I'm going to get into a lot more of the details and the variety of the types of things that you will see depending on the kinds of schools that are being applied to. And then I'll wrap up with where we are currently in the financial aid environment, what's currently happening, what are some potential pitfalls that you should be keeping an eye on, as well as some new and different things that I think are going to be very positive for you. So let's first start talking about all of the various types of forms that you will need to complete as you go through the financial aid process. They are to the point of either very extensive or very simple. And I'm going to use acronyms, but I'm going to try very hard to make sure that I'm clear with you as to what those acronyms are and what they're for. So let's start with the free financial aid application, which is the FAFSA. That's FAFSA. That is the form that is used for every student to apply for the federal funds. The federal funds are the grant funds, the Pell, the SEOG, the Federal Work Study. SEOG is Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant. Also for any types of loans, federal loan programs, the subsidized loan, the unsubsidized loan. These are all direct loan programs. Every student who is applying for financial aid, regardless of what institution, what kind of institution, public, private, must complete the FAFSA if they are interested in applying for any level of financial aid. That's the first step. It is a free form. One of the things I try to make sure I remind every parent is that because it's a free form, you should never, ever go onto a website that says, I will help you fill out your FAFSA for $35. Or you can sign up with this organization and this organization will submit your FAFSA for you for $12. If you have questions about how to complete the FAFSA, there are lots of information on the site that you actually apply for the FAFSA, but you can also at any time talk to the financial aid office at any of the schools that you're applying to. That's what we're there for. You should feel that you can't speak to a financial aid office because your child is not at the school or not at the school currently. So just remember that there is free information, free access to guidance, so you should never have to pay for that. After you've completed that form, there are schools that may require that you complete a profile. This is called the College Board Profile. The College Board Profile is a form that is much more extensive than the FAFSA. It does ask for information that is not only from the year that you're currently filing, but the prior year and then the prior year. And then there's also an estimated income piece. It asks for lots of asset information. It asks for a lot of investment information. And the reason that schools will ask for you to complete this form is because they have their own institutional aid. And their own institutional aid is usually in the form of a grant. And therefore, they're allowed to and can use what they call as the College Board Profile so that they can ascertain the need of the family, which is why there is so much information, and then provide you with whatever eligibility your child has for institutional grant funding. Now, this is need-based funding. It's a very big difference between need funding and merit funding. Merit funding, you don't need to fill out any of these forms. Merit funding is based on your admissions and based on academic credentials. So usually when a school is offering merit funding, they're offering merit funding based on your current GPA, based on your current involvement, based on your admissions criteria, strong applicant that you might be. And usually merit funding is also scholarship funding. So again, not something you have to pay back. Scholarship and grant funding are free. You do not have to pay that back. So again, when you're wondering whether a school has merit funding or need-based funding, you should always be checking their websites. Their websites are going to give you a lot of general information about the funding that is available, whether they do provide merit funding what need funding they have. Do they have institutional funding? Every school does not have institutional funding. For example, public institutions, very large public institutions, have very minimal institutional grant funding. Many of them do have merit funding, but again, that's limited. Many of the Ivies, if not all of the Ivies, have institutional grant funding, and they will ask you to complete both the FAFSA and the College Board profile. I would suggest that if you're wondering if you're eligible for financial aid, there's two things that you can do. One, go to the website of the schools and look at what they call the calculator. Every school has some kind of calculator. It could be a cost of attendance calculator, it could be a direct cost calculator, it could be just called a school calculator, but it's a calculator that allows you to determine for yourself, should I apply? Should I try? It's programmed so that it will look at that particular school's cost of attendance, which is the budget, which is the expense for the student to go to school, and it'll add in the information you provide to do an estimate of what is the potential contribution from the family. That potential contribution from the family then helps to assess what would the need be, and therefore what is the possibility for aid to be received to you from the school. It's a very rough estimate, so remember to use the word estimate when you're doing this, but it also gives you an idea of, well, should I apply or shouldn't I apply? My second recommendation is to apply. Do it your first year. There's no harm in applying. The worst that happens is the financial aid office says, we're really sorry, but you're not eligible for any scholarship funding. Doesn't mean that they may not be eligible for work study funding, and it doesn't mean that you may not be eligible for loan funding. So I always suggest if you're really not sure, or you think you're borderline, or every school has different financial aid policies when it comes to their own institutional funding, try. You don't have to do it the second, third, and fourth year, but at least it gives you landscape. I also think it's very important because some of you may be fortunate enough to not have just one student in school, but two, or three, or four, or more. And as that increases, so does your eligibility for aid, particularly in the federal piece. You are going to become more aid eligible simply by virtue of the fact that all of the needs analysis calculations, all of the determination in terms of eligibility will take into consideration that cost that you will have as a result of having more than one sibling in school. So it's well worth considering, particularly if you're in that situation. Now, I talked about some of the forms. There are also lots of other forms that every institution has their own requirements. Some will ask for tax returns, some will ask for W-2s, some will ask for their own institutional forms, some will ask just for a scholarship form, some will ask for a waiver form. What you want to do is you want to scope out the websites, particularly the financial aid websites at each of the schools, and the admissions websites at each of the schools that will give you an idea of what are the forms that are required and what are the forms that are not required. And what kinds of funding does institutions have? Do they have merit funding? Do they have institutional grant funding? Is it all scholarship funding? And I would be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit about the loan funds. Many of the public schools are going to include in their award notices loan funds. And when you're not familiar with the kinds of loans that are out there, it can be a little daunting and it can be a little frightening. But there is also very good websites, studentloans.gov, very good websites that talk about loan programs and the eligibility for loan programs and the benefits and disadvantages. The two that I will talk about today are the subsidized loan, which is as it's called. It is the loan that the government pays the interest while the student is in school. Can't get a loan like that anywhere. You can't get a mortgage loan like that. You can't get a credit loan like that. This is a loan that offers your student an opportunity to glean either between $2,500 and $3,500 in an academic year that is basically interest-free until you go into repayment, until you've graduated. So if you're eligible, and they'll know if they're eligible after you've completed the FAFSA. Remember that free application that I told you about, the FAFSA? That's the form that will let you know if you're eligible for the subsidized loan. The second loan is the unsubsidized loan, just as it's called. Basically means the student can borrow that loan, doesn't matter whether you're eligible or not eligible. Unsubsidized loans are interest accruing while the student is in school. Again, anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000 a year. And anyone is eligible for that. It isn't going to matter what the results of the FAFSA are. And obviously, again, the interest rate is better because these are federally assured loans and they are fixed interest rates. So, and each year you can check to see what the interest rates are. I'm going to stop with that and just talk a little bit about where we are today. What's the financial world look like today? The good news is there's still a FAFSA. The good news is that there's still Pell. The good news is that there's still work study. These are all great programs for our undergraduate students. And the good news is that you have financial aid offices that are going to help you through the process no matter what. Please make sure you take advantage of us. That's what we're here for. Doesn't matter whether it's Penn, as you can see from behind me, that's where I'm from. It doesn't matter if it's Rutgers. It doesn't matter if it's the local community college. We are all here to help and to provide you guidance and to provide you information when and however you need it, whether it's at the beginning of the process, whether you're 4 years out of it, or whether you're just about to embark upon it. So please don't hesitate to ask us. You, I'm sure, have been reading the headlines. I'm sure you've been reading lots of changes are coming down the road, particularly when it comes to borrowing funds, particularly when it comes to the different kinds of loan programs that are available. The important thing to remember with all of those changes that are currently upon us and will be upon us more starting the fall of 26 is that you want to keep track of your borrowing. You want to keep track of what loans you're borrowing, how much you're borrowing, and you want to think as much as possible about what do you believe the future educational plans are. I know what I'm saying. I know I'm saying your students are embarking as a freshman and they have no clue what they're going to do. Totally get that. But it's really helpful for you as the parent and for the student to think about the long term. They may not want to go to graduate school. They may not want to finish 4 years. They may want to only do 2 years. But think about all of the planning and all of the potential loan borrowing that may exist throughout that process. And I also ask all of you, in all sincerity, to try to be as honest as you possibly can be with your student who's going to be going to school. And what I mean by that is try to let them know what the boundaries are, what is affordable and what isn't affordable. So you're not in the lobby of the school that your son or daughter is in love with, telling them, we just can't afford this. It's the most heart-wrenching conversation I could ever have with a family. And I do have those conversations, and they're so hard. You would do yourself a favor and your son or your daughter a favor by having some of those conversations way ahead of time so that you know what your boundaries are and you know what to expect.